Hi, it's Paul Ryan. Running and managing a business is no easy task. When you consider what's required in terms of working capital, sales, customer service, accounting and tax, staff, business development, it's very easy to get lost, frustrated, and it can really test your determination to make it all work. To be successful in business, you do need an ounce of luck. And in some cases, people tend to create their own luck. One of the keys to success is not to try and do it all on your own. As the old saying goes, you need to surround yourself with good people. So, just like a sporting team has a coach, many business owners and management teams are now turning towards having their own business coach. Today I want to find out more about the role of a business coach and how they can help guide, influence and help a business be accountable to their own growth aspirations. Chris Dionne is one of the founding partners of global business coaching group, the Shirlaws Group. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Paul. Good to talk to you.
Mate, I'd like to start with a question around business coaching itself. It seems to be becoming a business coach is far more prevalent today than 10 or 20 years ago. Is that a fair realisation? And if so, why?
Look, it is a fair realisation. And if I put it into sort of terms that hopefully that the listeners can relate to, because I'm sure they're from, primarily, the mortgage industry, but a lot of other industries. It's really, it's about evolution of an industry. So what was a business coach when we started 16 years ago was really rolled into anybody that had the word coach behind their name. And our analysis of of what I call a very cottage-based industry all those years ago is definitely around evolution. A lot more people now are starting to place a value, a bit like sports coaches. There's physios, there's all of these different coaching disciplines that a sports team would take on inside camp and sort of around the field. No different to businesses, where you've got life coaches, executive coaches, business coaches, and let's call them leadership coaches. I've heard of career coaches. There's all sorts of forms that it takes. And business coaching, although being the smallest segment when we started, has really taken on, in the last 10 years, really taken on its own meaning, and people are a lot clearer on the definition of requirements of the business coach.
So, okay, in broad terms, what's the role of a business coach within a business?
Well, look, there's the long and the short answer, obviously, but from our perspective, there's some pretty simple things that the role that we work, that we have inside companies, and my clients tell me this is the role that I find you fulfilling. So it can be evolutionary, it can change through the length of the relationship with the client, but essentially, you're anything from taking on a mentorship role. So, for example, what I say to people is you can only mentor somebody if you've been in that role. So I can't mentor a CFO because I haven't been a CFO, but I've been a CFO of our fast-growing company, so therefore I can mentor a CEO. You take on the role of facilitator from time to time when there's issues that come up in the business amongst partners right through to staff. You're a sounding board. As I say to people, running a business sometimes can be the loneliest job on the planet. And who do you talk to? Who do you get to bounce ideas off? Yes, you go and have a conversation, a coffee with some mates and some people that you've known through business that you consider to be successful, but it's very informal. So it's formalising those approaches inside businesses for people to stay focused on the outcome that they want to achieve. And the other point I wrote, that I was thinking about when I was talking to you was about this. We call it Checkpoint Charlie. Well, I call it Checkpoint Charlie in sort of special forces terms, where people will just ring me up after I've finished a session with them and they've had this epiphany and they're just checking in. So quite often checking in with people to make sure that it's, that the way they're going, the track they're taking is on purpose where they want to go, because people do get off track from time to time. But ultimately it's about the reskilling of what I call the great technician. So people start out in business being a great technician. Evolving that business into being a business owner requires a completely different set of skills. So it's about managing what I call one of their biggest assets that they haven't always defined as their biggest asset. So that's kind of what I see the role of certainly business coaches doing. It's multifaceted, but it's really about identifying which role at what point in time in that cycle that you take with those clients.
Okay, so, I mean, you touched on something there where you said that you've never really been a CFO and therefore it's hard to coach a CFO. So if you're out there running a business now, how does a business owner or management, how do they find the right business coach, the one that's going to suit them, and what should they be looking for before they engage a business coach?
Yeah, another very important point, because the throwaway line that I've been using with some clients, and throwaway line in the sense of don't feel bad about this, but I'm quite often the third coach they brought in. So they've gone through the evolutionary process with either a life coach or an executive coach, and what they need to understand is what do I actually need. So therefore, if you're on a growth phase in a business, look for a coach that actually has grown a business, not just they've got some tools that they've integrated or that they've been able to buy off the shelf and slot into your business. But you want to know that they've actually been there, done that, and they've walked a mile in your shoes. They understand the cycles, they understand what's going on. So, it's important that you align. So each coaching discipline that I outlined before has its own merits in different cycles in a business. So people need to understand, it's like a buyer beware. Understand what you're looking for in your business, understand what you think your needs might be, and then align that back to the capability and skills of the coach or the coaching firm you're looking at considering.
So I could only assume there that before you take on a client, you'd want to know as much as you can about them, because, I mean, look, running a business is not easy, as we said, but it's the day-to-day operational things, the business development and the strategy and all those three things. And you and I have spoken about before the fact that a business owner could spend all day, every day, just doing the operational things, but they lose track of how am I getting new clients and what's my end goal and am I staying on track? So how do you encourage a business owner to have their, what I call percentages on a day or month basis to make sure they're putting the same amount of time, the amount of time they're putting into operations, that they're not forgetting business development and business strategy?
Yeah, look, it's another important element, and I know that you know how we work, and you're a fan of our process. So for me, this is about putting a process into place in the business to understand what we call the numbers behind your business. Understanding the numbers and ratios in a business broken into areas, and those three areas that we work with are traditionally known, which we're very well known for, is red, blue, black. And basically working out, do you have the right resources doing the right jobs, including the principal or including the owner of the business, focusing on the right tasks. Now, what happens with a lot of business owners is, let's assume they focus on some red tasks, which is what we call infrastructure. They're things that don't generate money but are critical for your business to work and survive. So HR, legal, compliance, accounting, finance, all stuff you might do after 5, or stuff that you might get bogged down during the day and you forget to go and do the blue stuff, which is revenue generating. Or even worse, you're spending too much time in the blue and you're not focusing on getting the red dealt with. Now, don't confuse that with I have to go and do the red. So getting a process in place that helps a business understand their ratios, where their time's going, and then the opportunity then is to work out what's the right ratio for my business. What do I need to reweight to get the best outcome that I could currently get out of my business? And the black areas, as I haven't sort of mentioned yet, is really about where are my leverage points in the business? Where's the innovation piece coming in? Which is, I think, a very important part that a lot of businesses have forgotten about, getting this creative mindset, allowing yourself some time to sit down and just, if you like, dream, look out the window, come up with this, not next big idea what to spend money on, but certainly just going, if I just tweak something in my business, that could be a big game changer for me. Business owners never give themselves time to do that.
And I can only imagine that the red, blue, black would be an evolving process in terms of a business starting out, like someone that's out there today starting their own business. One can only assume they've got a strategy of what they want to achieve, but it's more about blue. It's more about business development, like where's my customers coming from? Who am I meeting with? What networking groups have I associated with? What's my business development? So I would say that they'd have more blue to start with than what they may do in year 2 and 3.
Exactly right. And it's really interesting when we have a tool that we basically it's our 101 of business. We talk about the stages cycle of a business, and it's the evolution that unfolds as a business matures. And we don't place timelines on it, but certainly in the first part or the first part of the business up to about 2 or 3 years, you'll find that there's a big focus on blue, which is what you've identified. What typically happens when I look at businesses going for a bit longer than that is they've forgotten to put the infrastructure pieces in place to take on the next, what we call phase of growth in a controllable fashion. A lot of these businesses, they hit that revenue vein, as I call it. They're never going to say no to clients. They keep those ticking along. They're touching everything every single day. It's like Twister, as I explain to people. I don't know, anyone listens to play Twister, but you're going to end up in a very awkward, messy position at some point if you're trying to put your hands on everything. And if you think of that as a visual, you only end up one way, which is sort of falling over and having some stress. And Twister might be fun, I suppose, if you had a few drinks as well. But at the same time, taking it across into a business, you need to be very conscious of, okay, I have to learn to let some things go, and I have to learn to get those things happening in my business. And I may not be the right person. This is the biggest issue for entrepreneurs and business owners, is learning to let go of some things that they know fundamentally they shouldn't be doing, but the habit is, well, I'm the only one that can do it properly. And they run this mantra of, if you want anything done properly here, do it yourself. Even with one-man operators, they still have to, one-person operators, sorry, they still have to think about fundamentally, what's my next phase, what's my resources I'm bringing on, what do I need to let go of, what structure do I need to put in place. And they need to think like a corporatized model, not a corporatized business, but a corporatized model to increase the asset value of their company, of their business.
Yeah. So, therefore, how important is accountability in terms of, we all have dreams and aspirations, but for whatever reason, a lack of confidence or a few roadblocks and so forth, how do you keep, you understand the growth aspirations of your clients, but how do you keep them accountable to what it is that they want to achieve or what they've agreed to do?
Well, and I'm sure, if anybody, any of the listeners have actually had a coach in the business, there's some pretty basic things you can do. And that's right down to setting yourself some targets that you want to set to, align that back to activity, and then you, each day, each week, each month, I do some very tight, what I call diary scheduling. So this is a very basic way of how do I keep on purpose, on track. And I tier it back to what is that end goal for that month or that quarter or that half year. I then anchor back to what do I need to go and do activity-wise and those things I need to go and do to fulfill what I need done in the business. So that can be scheduling, it can be a to-do list, it can be focusing on the right areas. As you say, if you don't focus on those right areas, you're going to end up defocused and having a real energy problem inside your business, and then that'll result in you feeling less confident. It'll result in you feeling like you're doing all the work if you have some staff in there, and you'll end up in a spiral downwards. So you've really got to get disciplined around what's the outcome, what do I need to do, turn that into activity, and then work out what does that mean for me each day. So a little formula I've been giving clients in what we call the blue area, the revenue, is R equals A times C. So that's revenue equals activity times conversion. Yeah. Now, most businesses, for example, don't know what their conversion rates are. Therefore, they don't know the activity they have to do to generate the revenue.
So just quickly, what's your definition of conversion rate? Is that the number of people you talk to the number of conversions to sales and therefore money coming in the door?
It could be as simple as that, and it's knowing what that conversion rate is. But in this instance, I've used it as, okay, so how many people do we need to see? In pure sales terms, most people, a lot of the sales stuff I did when I was going through the sales environment through the 80s and everything was 10-3-1. So you did 10 phone calls, you made 3 appointments, you got 1 sale. That's a pretty standard statistic for salespeople.
Yeah.
So changing that 10 into 6 and then into 2 is you kind of go, well, how are my conversion rates? Am I using the right approach? Am I solution selling or am I product selling? So if you don't understand what your conversion rates are currently, then how do you know what thing to change or to put in place if you don't understand your metrics behind even just something as simple as what is my conversion rate in sales.
Yep.
Basic.
If, you work with a number of different multinationals all the way down to businesses with, say, 3 or 4 staff.
Mm-hmm.
If I could ask you to share with us what do you believe are your top 3 characteristics of a successful business,
mm-hmm.
and then conversely, what are the 3 characteristics of a business that you would consider to be, I don't know, for want of a better term, in chaos or a potential train wreck? Let's go to the positives first.
Okay. Well, one key element, and it doesn't matter what size business this is, and I can give you some very, very simple examples. But let's take the first part, the positives first. The first one is around what I call alignment. The Greeks have a saying, the fish rots from their head down. Now, when I meet principals and they're kind of talking to staff, and they go, well, if I could get good staff, this business would be so much better. So they're running this. So there's no alignment inside the business. There's no common goal, and so if the good ones have an aligned business. They also have, the second point is a defined culture. Now, there was a recent story that Warren Buffett, for those of you that follow the sort of markets, and Warren Buffett's a pretty successful guy, I would have thought. There was an article, which some of the listeners, if they want to contact me, I'll send it to you, Paul, and you can send it. But it was really saying his success. He came out in the press at a shareholders meeting recently. So, people fly from all over the world to attend the shareholders meeting. And the whole essence behind it was, it's because he's 83 and his fund manager is 90, and they were talking about succession planning. And he said, all that yeah, I know. It's funny, isn't it? And they're not going anywhere in a hurry. But the interesting thing was that he said, it is all, for us, our success is all around having built, lived by, and implemented a defined culture. So the good companies, and if you can pick some companies out there, the defined culture would be people's perception around Google, Apple. Do you think of those sorts of companies? But there are equally smaller companies that have and some of my clients have said, ever since we did the culture material, it's really helped us. And it's helped align staff and get the right people on board. So that's the second one. Very important. Now, if I can just roll 2 into one, but the third one that I find is setting a vision, and what I mean by that is articulating to everybody in the business where the ship's going. Most people, when they have problems in a business, when I talk to the staff, they say, I've got no idea where we're going.
Yeah.
And I can't buy into something, if you like, if for the want of a better term, unless I know where it's going. So set a vision. And the other thing that I'm going to strongly suggest in this current market and environment is that you need to spend some time aligning to that vision, but have an innovative mindset. I've just done but I've done another podcast recently around the difference between innovation and innovating. And the main difference is one is about implementation of the innovative idea. And it doesn't have to cost a company a lot of money. It just has to you have to have the mindset to go, we need to think of, we need to have some innovative ways, even changing processes, the way that you do things inside your company can be considered to be innovative. So
is that just simply creating a point of differentiation to your competitures and be prepared to change?
Even in the business, competitors is only one angle. That's one angle. But even the way that I've got this mortgage broker at the moment who just pulls apart what I call the way that he does things inside the business, inside his own, when he writes loans, for example, and he said it's just changed the whole mentality of the staff that all sit behind me. He said, I'm working less hours, I'm earning more money. And he said, it's just the fact you said, can you go and understand your numbers, pull apart everything that's happening, put a timeline next to it and work out how I get it done better. And he said, as soon as I did that, it just changed everything.
Well, and that's the power of the business coach, because you've hit the nail on the head. He's working less hours, he's got more time to spend with his family, and he's making more money.
Well, that was his goal, and again with the business coach, it was me just asking Asim, and he said, as soon as you asked me that question, which no one has, he said it allowed me to not feel judged. So another thing about when I'm coaching people is I don't walk in there with any, this is good, this is bad. I walk in there with going, where's the opportunity sitting and how do we exploit that?
Hmm.
So they're the good ones. The train wrecks.
Well, let's use chaos.
Okay, chaos. So let's start with the case. The key ones. Oh, look, I've got a few on the top of my list. But if I just pick some key ones, one is that businesses tend to be very unstructured and undisciplined in everything they do in the business. That will get you through a certain phase in your business, up to a certain maturity level. Beyond that, it becomes chaos in the business, and people lose direction. They disconnect with the business, and you get staff turnover, which is the most expensive thing for small to medium-sized enterprise. The minute you start losing staff, so that's the big one for me. The opposite of alignment is lack of alignment on a number of levels. Partnerships not aligned, partners not feeling as though they've got all one common goal. That's a big one. The other one that I find, to be honest, Paul, now whether you want to put this into the coaching realm or another provider to the listeners, but there's normally little investment back into what I call their biggest asset. So the businesses that strike difficulty after a certain period of time, we've identified that they've never treated their business as one of their biggest assets. Now, they all want to sell their business at some point in time, which is ironic. And it's like having a house. So let's assume you buy a house, you buy a property, and let's call that an asset. You rent out that asset. Same principles apply in a business. If you don't look after that asset, if you don't, paint it from time to time, you don't change the pipes, you don't fix the things, the asset will deplete. Yep. Exactly the same in a business. If you underinvest,
it's a good analogy.
That's the biggest one that I found. So for the listeners, I would ask them to not have one of the big companies that this has really been the train wreck is Kodak. So I'm going to ask them not to have a Kodak moment, because that was Kodak's catch cry. Have a Kodak moment. I'm going to ask them not to do that. And the main element to that was there was no innovation mindset in there. They never thought digital would take off.
Yeah. And that's just looking ahead.
Yeah.
Well, that comes back. That comes back to your black, the red, blue, black. That comes back to the black in terms of strategy. Is where are we now, and where are we going to be in 12, 18 months, 5 years' time? What's
the industry doing? Most companies I've met haven't tracked the industry, the cycles. With our funds management background, we're very interested in what industry cycles are doing. So you can actually predict some of the things that are coming up, because every industry has a cycle. Every business has a cycle. Every market has a cycle. Property goes up, property goes down. Shares go up, shares go down. Industries go up, industries go down. So if you're going to sit there and not spend any time in the black, it doesn't have to be a lot of time, because it's a big investment and it will take away from the blue. But you do need to sit there and kind of go, what if we just had 2 hours a week on black and we didn't have a Kodak moment? What would they do to our business?
Fantastic. So in terms of the Shirlaws, we mentioned before, the Shirlaws is a global coaching group. So I can only assume that you've got not only the intellectual property, the systems and the processes, but you've also got a number of coaches in and around Australia. Mm-hmm. How many coaches do you have in Australia that the listeners may wish to make contact with?
Well, we've got over 16 in Australia at the moment, and they're what I call the Shirlaws focus coaches. We have other business lines which have a different agenda, and they've got other people in there. But let's just say there's 16 around Australia for listeners' purposes in regard to Shirlaws focus.
Fantastic. Mate, I could talk to you all day in and around this type of topic, but you've created some wonderful insight to our listeners today in terms of running a business and what they should look for in a business coach or a mentor or perhaps even a guiding influence. So if you're out there looking for somebody that can help you with running your business, you can visit the Shirlaws website by www.shirlawsgroup.com and perhaps get in touch with one of the coaches listed on the website. So, Chris, we really, really appreciate the opportunity to chat today, and we thank you for your time.
Absolute pleasure, Paul, and thank you for your time, and I really appreciate it and hope it was helpful for the listeners.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris.
Bye-bye.